As the head of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, openly worries about another terrorist attack on our turf, Apple CEO Tim Cook tells ABC News that unlocking the iPhone used by a San Bernardino terrorist would be, quote, bad for America, end quote. He says overriding security would make it easier for criminals to do the same thing, a concern that doesn't keep banks or hospitals from having a way to access your records. But here's another way to look at it. World War II. Back then, car companies converted their businesses to making planes and tanks. Sure, FDR made him do it, but they got on board. People collected tin cans and pots and pans to mash them into war material. Everyone pitched in. Kate Smith's radio broadcast raised millions for the war. Wrigley's Gum started a women's baseball league since so many males were at war. So do you think there was a lot of hand-wringing over whether to support a country at war? Unlikely. My guess is there was no self-righteous posturing. They did the right thing. And yes, those were different times, but this is a different time, too. The battlefield's here, the enemy's suicidal, the kamikazes walk among us and wish not simply to kill, but to end our world. Cook's stance, to me, seems very small, but I'm sure his Silicon Valley pals are patting him on the back. But what if that phone contained info on the impending deaths of their loved ones? I bet what's bad for America suddenly doesn't matter. So, Eric, is he posturing because he doesn't want to be a pariah among Silicon Valley?
No, I think he honestly believes that the encryption is such an important aspect of his phone that a lot of his company's business is based on that. I will tell you, there's all this testimony that goes on on Capitol Hill now on this, and you watch the Apple stock, and it literally moves based on what the latest testimony is. If he were to break the encryption, I bet you 10–15% of that stock goes south, and then you're talking about tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
No one wants to be on the front end of that. But again, can I offer a solution? Again, Apple hasn't come out with another version. We've been on iPhone 6 for a really long time.
Right.
I remember it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 went fast, and even 6 came fast, and there was a 6S. Make your next generation different. Make the encryption different. Break this one and move on. You'll sell even more iPhones.
That's what they're going to do. So this is just like big crybaby tears from Silicon Valley blowing over all of us like Katrina. I mean, come on, grow up. Keep this country safe. I'm so tired of it. This is all about them trying to posture with all... Great, all the terrorists love you, Apple, winning.
Can I throw one other thing? If you talk to people from Cato Institute, they will tell you the biggest problem they have is when government tells private business what to do, and they want government to stay out of private business. So there's your line in the sand.
But then you have liberals that love it when government tells businesses what to do, and then they change their mind when it comes to this. Dana, there was an analogy that Sam Harris has used, which I thought was really interesting. He said, like, what if you killed a dozen people, but in your house was a room filled with evidence? That's what an iPhone is.
Yep.
So if the police can get a warrant and get into that tiny room, this phone is essentially a tiny room filled with evidence.
The other thing that in that same podcast that you sent to me, Sam Harris, it's a really good one, check it out, is that he was talking about victims who have been murdered, and they were texting right before they got murdered, and you're not allowed, law enforcement can't get into the phone to see what was happening on the text before they're murdered. So imagine you're law enforcement and you're the FBI and you're looking at the San Bernardino victims' families, and you're having to explain, well, it's just that, see, there's this encryption thing and we can't get in, and blah, blah, blah. And that seems very unsatisfying to law enforcement.
Yeah. Juan, my point, I used some examples from a book by Barry Latzer on war efforts by businesses during World War II. Isn't this similar? Shouldn't Tim Cook look at this and go, look, this is about America. We should be doing something. We should be doing our part to prevent terror.
Well, no, because as you pointed out, FDR forced the car company.
Right.
He took over some of the stealing.
But the FBI, he should oblige the FBI, right?
Well, I think so, but, you know, I'm listening to this very carefully because I think the difference, to be frank, is that it's a conflict between your liberty in terms of your privacy rights, constitutional rights, and the national security.
Yeah.
Now, the whole national security apparatus, you pointed out Jay Johnson, but it's also Jim Comey at the FBI, it's Loretta Lynch at Justice, it's John Brennan at CIA. They all agree. And they've got a judge on their side with a subpoena, you know, saying, give it up, give it up.
With a court order.
That's what
Therefore,
I'm
they
saying.
can be held in contempt.
Okay, so...
Jail them.
Right, but you get Cato, as Eric was saying, you know, libertarian, pretty conservative libertarians, and you get other people who are concerned about the idea that this is a slippery slope. And that's the argument Tim Cook's putting forward. Ted Olson, your pal, also the lawyer.
We like
and Ted Olson is somebody who lost a wife in 9/11, so he's not like, oh, I'm, indifferent to the problems of people. But the key here from their perspective is, oh, so if you say the government can have a key, a back door, I think Cook used the example of, so he's going to tell us to turn on Dana's camera on her iPhone at some point because we want to see what Dana's up to.
Dog pictures.
Yeah, it's not going to be all or nothing. This is, I mean, people have common sense. They're going to go like, we need this to prevent death.
Can I just throw one more thing? So New York City Police Commissioner said, and by the way, if you do break that encryption, we have a lot of
outstanding
crimes here that we'd like to do.
See, the slippery slope.
The slippery slope.
The slippery
slope. Where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? Is it murder? Is it rape? Is it domestic violence? Is it robbery?
Let's start with ISIS.
Yeah, but you know what, Kimberly?
No,
you know what it is?
End with
Again,
ISIS.
if you use the metaphor, if a killer has a box in his house filled with evidence, the police get a warning, go in. This is a box filled with evidence. No, that's
I want
I'm saying
the box.
I would assume you would agree with me.
Absolutely. You can count on
I only
me.
go to the people who agree with me.
There you go. You're such a closer.
Juan, we agree at least 20% of the time.
That's true, but I was just making a point.
Hit it, Greg.
All right, sorry.